Now, especially when you start talking about multiple agencies and sharing of information, there's the issue of data and data governance and data sharing. How has that challenge been tackled by the council?
We distinguish between shared data and open data. So there are three types of data. There's closed data, so that's data that's confidential. It's got personal information in it or some other reason why it cannot be released. Shared data is data between trusted parties. And then open data is data that's free for anybody to use. Mm-hmm. For the VR systems, we mainly used open data, and that involved talking to other agencies about this is the type of data that can be consumed by this kind of platform and making sure that that was made available. Mm-hmm. Data is sometimes mistaken for information in these contexts. So data is what you make information from. Information has had cultural lenses, it's had processes applied to it so that it becomes a fact. Mm-hmm. That can sometimes mean officials can be reluctant to release it. So people will say, well, what happens if we do something with the data and people come to the wrong conclusion? Mm-hmm. And that involves having a conversation about, that's not actually a data governance problem, that's a communications problem.
Mm-hmm. There's one other aspect when you talk about an integrated ecosystem, particularly when you've got technology suppliers, the government, the community, the NGOs, and what's been your experience in managing that integrated ecosystem? There's a lot of talk about collaboration and the benefits of collaboration, but collaboration is a challenge in itself. How has that experience panned out for the council?
So the key to collaboration is to understand it's not the same as conversation. Mm-hmm. Collaboration is working with somebody for a purpose, and understanding that animating purpose is vital to making it work. So when it comes to engaging with different partners, quite often what we'll do is put in place engagement agreements and disengagement agreements. At a very simple level, it's around saying, this is what we're after as a partner, this is what we're interested in, and this is how we're going to do it. When it comes to disengagement, it involves things like, when we're no longer interested in something, this is what it will look like in the relationship, this is how we'll signal it, and this is the discussion we'll have. Mm-hmm. That covers things like what happens to the data. It covers things like how you create the architecture behind some of these things so you can transition from platform to platform. The other part of that is understanding the different drivers between commercial enterprises and public service. Mm-hmm. We're going to be around for a very long time, and that means that we have to be able to transition between providers. Mm. With corporates, that means being very aware of not being locked in. So that involves principles like modulation, using layers of open data, open standards or open source to effectively lubricate the different modules so you can pull them apart and reassemble them. Mm-hmm. And say take a solution and make it go from a single vendor environment to a multi-vendor environment over time. Mm-hmm. When it comes to startups, that similar type of methodology is required because startups have great ideas, but they run off the passion of their founders. Mm-hmm. If there's anything you know about bureaucrats, it's we're not the most passionate bunch in the world. And what that means is those startups are inherently unstable because of it. Mm. There are some really valuable ideas that society needs, but what we need to do is find a way where we can deal with that risk that comes from instability and make sure we retain that progress. Mm-hmm. Other thing we have to bear in mind when we're dealing with those kinds of risks is understanding where our conflicts are going to be. So some conflicts are conflicts you need to have, some conflicts are quite destructive, and it's about making sure the avenues are available for the ones you need to have and that you're well aware of the ones that are coming.
Mm-hmm. Earlier we spoke about the growth in the technology sector here in Wellington, the undersupply of housing. Mm. How have some of these challenges around the Smart City initiative resulted in new startups and new ideas and new opportunities for industry? Because when we talk about a smart society, we can't talk about smart city without talking about the growth in smart industries.
The City Council's involvement in the tech community is about understanding what our place is. Because it's such a dynamic community, it's constantly evolving. Sometimes that place is around understanding where there's a deficit in the community. So, for example, in the past we've funded things like the Collider program. We continue to fund agencies like Wellington NZ and the GovTech programs through Creative HQ to provide a path through. Sometimes we're a step in the data journey of an organisation. So a good example is places like homes.co.nz and the other companies like OneRoof. We were one of the very first councils to release rating data to those companies so that they could make it available to the digital house market. Mm. Often when we're looking for partners or we're looking at being a step on that journey, what we're doing is trying to find industries that are like one of our services and looking at how we can be part of that. So one of the challenges with being a council is there's only 75 of us. And that means that we're a relatively small market. So it's far easier for us to find a market that we fit with than to try and evolve a market of our own, because that gives us better access to innovation, investment, and willing partners.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing with us the details of this particular case, Sean.
Thanks, Russ.